Al Floss presents the complete and alarming history of America's greatest garage band, the Stools.
I think the Stools' first album will always be my favorite, as it brings us back to a simpler time.
Good morning, daylight. Come on and crack it down.
Your music snobs see the early days of rock and roll as a bunch of one-hit wonders, with a few noticeable exceptions. I mean, the 40s had more than their fair share of one-hit wonders. Ozzie Nelson, I'm Nobody's Baby, Rudy Valley, As Time Goes By, Judy Garland and Gene Kelly for Me and My Gal, Skitch Henderson's 5 Minutes More. The list goes on and on. The difference is, and this is a very important distinction, that they were all masters of their craft. Even if they never had chart success again, they could make a living playing music.
Good morning, clock radio.
Musician was a viable career option in the 40s, even if you weren't a star. But all that started to change for various societal and economic reasons in the 50s. Brought about mostly by all these truckers who were able to order a mail-order guitar and learn 3 chords and could rhyme moon with June and have a regional, if not national, hit.
Now, when the public moved on from their song after a week or two, the one-hit wonders of the 50s were left with absolutely nothing. You know, there was no money left, there was no royalties. They had blown any advance they had possibly had. Their future, driving a truck or, excuse me, you want fries with that?
Well, it wasn't like they could catch on with another band like musicians could back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I think the reason the Stools stayed together as long as they did is because nobody else would have them.
In 1956, rock and roll was finding its feet. But the other side of the coin, country music, was reeling. Having lost the youth market to this upstart jungle music, they were scrambling to find acts that could bring the kids back.
One such act was the great Ray Price, a former veterinary student, a war hero, with a Texas shuffle sound featuring a fiddle, steel guitar, electric bass, and a swinging 4/4 rhythm.
His song Crazy Arms was to capture the hearts and wallets of America, reaching #1 on the Billboard charts in June of 1956 and lasting 20 weeks.
Not everyone was happy with Crazy Arms' success. Howsoever, the Stools' country song was kept off the charts. Al Floss wrote a scathing editorial that was picked up by UPI, the United Press International, claiming Billboard and more specifically, founder James Hannigan was cooking the books to inflate Crazy Arms numbers.
I can't really comment on that in this context.
Now, Billboard had printed a number of articles about Al Floss's shady practices, and the argument continued until some ethnic friends of Al's who were in the jukebox industry said, listen, enough.
I don't remember any conversations like that. No comment.
And the Stools song that touched off this powder keg was the first single off their debut album, The Sheriff's Gone.
Wife's gone to her mother's to help put her dad in the ground. She's heading on the wrong pony on the Carmen merry-go-round. Sheriff's gone, one more round. Sheriff's gone, one more round. Sheriff's gone, one more round on me. She left me $20, some dinners that were frozen. I fed them to the ducks. I hit the ATM. Sheriff's gone, one more round. Sheriff's gone, one more round. Sheriff's gone, one more round on me. Now this bar don't get hopping until about noon o'clock.
I think the song The Sheriff's Gone was a solid country hit, and the Stools could have gone country. Not like the 70s pop country, real country sound.
From that day forward, Billboard steadfastly refused to put any of Dutchko's music on the charts, no matter how well they sold, costing Al Floss and the Stools untold millions.
That is true.
You would think being left off the Billboard charts would hurt the Stools. But much like Screaming Jay Hawkins, whose song I Put a Spell on You sold millions and was left off the charts, it didn't seem to bother them.
Jay Hawkins was a middleweight Golden Gloves boxer out of Alaska, where he once TKO'd a Dakota Black Bear in the second round of a 3-round charity bout.
In 1951, Hawkins turned to music and started playing the piano for jazz guitarist Tiny Grimes, but only got the gig if Hawkins would serve as Grimes' valet and sleep in his car so nobody would steal it.
Now, Hawkins also played with Fats Domino briefly, but he got kicked out of the band after he reportedly had a fist fight with Atlantic Records president Ahmet Ertegun, which is interesting because even though Jay was a Gold Glove boxer, the wiry Ahmet kicked his ass.
Hawkins originally intended to record I Put a Spell on You as a serious R&B ballad, which he'd done earlier on a minor label. He even brought in serious New York musicians, session aces, people like Mickey Baker from Mickey and Sylvia, Duke Ellington's drummer, Panama Francis, and Sam the Man Taylor, sax player with Cab Calloway, and so many others. But the nervous Hawkins had to be put at ease by producer Arnold Matson with a bottle of Old Colony Muscatel. And that's how we wound up with the grunting, gurgling sound of the classic I Put a Spell on You.
The song was banned in most chain stores and radio stations nationwide because it was thought to promote cannibalism. It was ignored by Billboard magazine, even though it was outselling the competition. But it served as Hawkins' entree into Cleveland disc jockey Alan Freed's Rock and Roll Review. And with that exposure, sales took off.
Freed even gave Hawkins a $300 bonus if he would come out of a coffin on stage when he's performing the song.
He had a cigarette-smoking human skull that he would carry around in his hand and call Henry. That kid was f***ed in the head.
Screamin' Jay Hawkins thought he was onto something with his zany madman voodoo act, so he milked it for all it was worth, paving the way for such shock rockers like Alice Cooper, Screamin' Lord Sutch, Marilyn Manson, among others.
The lesson wasn't lost on Al Floss. It was possible to make a pantload of money without ever having your name appear anywhere on the Billboard charts. You just had to draw attention to yourself.
Now, to get support for Screamin' Jay Hawkins' record, the label OK Records put out an ad telling DJs, don't be afraid, play it, we got your backs if you're fired.
One disc jockey, Bob Friesen on CHWK in British Columbia, actually did get fired for playing I Put a Spell on You. And when he reached out to the record company for help, they ignored him. Until Billboard magazine, of all places, did a story on him.
Although Jay Hawkins toured with The Clash and Nick Cave and appeared in the film American Hot Wax and several other cult films, and of course had his requisite more appreciated in Europe than in the States phase, he never regained the same success that he had in I Put a Spell on You. He died of an aneurysm in France in 2000, leaving behind somewhere around 50 to 75 kids and 6 ex-wives.
There's actually a website where Screaming Jay's kids can go and try to collect some of the royalties.
What are the Billboard's charts going to tell you anyway? Numbers could be fudged. Meatloaf's I Would Do Anything for Love, the Association's Cherish, and the Beach Boys' Kokomo were all #1 hits for crying out loud. I'd put the Stools' Worst song up against any one of them.
Paul Butterfield, Little Feat, John Prine, Hot Tuna, Tom Waits, Ry Cooder, all never got a song on the Hot 100 singles chart. So I'd say the Stools are in pretty good company.
And I can tell you for fact that they fudged the numbers on Rod Stewart's First Cut is the Deepest to make sure that the Sex Pistols stayed off the charts. Go ahead, look it up, May 27th, 1977.
In March of 1956, the fickle finger of fate started poking the Stools forward once again. A 23-year-old Carl Perkins had just broken through with his hit song Blue Suede Shoes. On his way to an appearance on the Perry Como Show in New York, the driver of the car Perkins was riding in, one Dave Stewart, fell asleep at the wheel near Dover, Delaware, and slammed into the back of a pickup truck.
Dave Stewart was killed. Now, Perkins' brother, who was also in the band, got seriously hurt. Carl Perkins broke his arm and cracked his skull, seriously derailing his career.
The music industry has always been a tight-knit community. Even before Perkins was placed in the ambulance, Al Floss and fellow manager Colonel Tom Parker snapped into action. Floss had the Stools booked as Perkins' replacement on the Como Show, and Colonel Tom Parker, even though he wouldn't officially be Elvis's manager for another few weeks, quickly had him get in the studio and record a cover version of Blue Suede Shoes, which would go on to become the Kings' third top 40 hit.
Carl Perkins sadly would never recover his career or his health. But it did give the Stools a chance to perform their latest single on the Perry Como Show, Drinking My Paycheck Tonight.
Well, there were no ifs, but I'd been working double shifts. It'd been a month since I seen the daylight. And it felt funny, but I was just trying to save some money. I was doing what I knew was right. See, there was this gal, and we'd been more than pals. I was gonna pay her shiny night, but she lied to me about needing surgery, so I'm drinking my paycheck tonight. Never seen a doctor bill, she don't even share her pills. You ask me, well, that ain't right. Heading down to the local gin mill, before I end up on Dr. Phil. I'm drinking my paycheck tonight.
An interesting side note, though he died in the car accident, Dave Stewart would become one half of the successful group, the Eurythmics, going on to write for Tom Petty, Mick Jagger, and Ringo Starr, and many others.
The Stools' debut album, Draconian Measures, 1956, was mostly cobbled together singles that they recorded in between live shows. But Elvin Anderson did manage to craft one tune in Italy with Ennio Morricone, while the band was forced off the road, while Cosmo Ditmar could answer some maternity and animal cruelty charges in a Boston court.
Morricone, of course, was the composer of the Italian state-run television station RAI. He would go on to score Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, among many other films. The song the two worked on was the iconic 8th of May.
Everybody find a partner, do it in the streets. Do it anywhere you want to, with or without sheets. But don't you come running to me if you come down with an STD. Hurrah, 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 48th of May.
For we all know it's outdoor intercourse day.
The 8th of May, the Stools' Outdoor Intercourse Day, became an annual rite of spring in America, the world, and beyond.
The Stools' guitarist, Cosmo Ditmar, was found guilty of all charges, but Al Floss whipped out some cash and made that all go away.
Thou shalt not bought thy brother's ox. Hurrah, 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 hurrah.
Now, while the 8th of May get all the attention, my personal favorite is Cry Hard, Cry Fast, a pioneering album my favorite track.
Oh yeah, Cry Hard, Cry Fast had an emotional connection for young girls. But more importantly, it was the first time a theremin was used in a song.
Some people will claim that Telstar by the Tornadoes in 1962 was the first song to have a synthesizer on it. They would be wrong.
In 1919, the musical instrument known as the theremin was invented by Russian spy Leo Theremin. Now, the instrument consists of two metal antennas that sense the performer's relative hand position and would emit a frequency or amplitude response in kind. Needless to say, it is a very complicated instrument to play.
In 1956, after hearing a theremin on DeMille's soundtrack to the Ten Commandments, Elvin Anderson instantly incorporated one into the Stools' debut album, Draconian Measures, most notably on the song Cry Hard, Cry Fast.
Post is out of business, but we still got Drake. We got Captain Crunch, but I still miss Quisp and Quake. Wouldn't be a Monday if you didn't have another heartache. Half dozen of one, six of another. You won't be happy till you're a single mother. You gonna cry hard and cry fast. One more bad relationship away from having 32 cats. You've been bitten so many times, your name should be Schwinn. Got your engine running down up to the motor end. Then come wobbling home like a pretty little skittle pig. This one said he loved you, snuggled for an hour. Said later on crouton, once you hit the shower, you're gonna cry hard and cry fast. One more bad relationship away from having 32 cats. More sensory experience than old John Locke. But then again, who am I to talk? You're gonna cry hard and cry fast. You're just one more relationship away from having 32 cats. Yeah, you're one more bad relationship away from having 32 cats. One more bad relationship away from having 32 cats.
A decade later, Paul Tanner, a former trombone player with the Glenn Miller Band, would play a theremin-like instrument on a handful of songs for Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. But we can credit the Stools for first introducing the theremin to rock and roll.
By the way, the tune Telstar was ripped off from the French film Austerlitz. Just saying.
See, Abe Gantz's Austerlitz wasn't released until 1965, so it is highly unlikely that anyone from the Tornadoes was listening to it in 1962. That said, Leslie Caron was fabulous in that picture.
In March of 1956, Al Floss booked the Stools as part of a 43-show in 30 cities in just 31-day tour with June Christy, the Four Freshmen, and Nat King Cole with the Ted Heath Orchestra.
June Christy was a great jazz singer who's been totally overlooked by history. The Four Freshmen were a great vocal harmony group who paved the way for the Beach Boys, and Nat Cole was, well, Nat Cole. It was an interesting bill for the Stools to be on.
On June 10th, the tour pulls into Alabama to do a few shows at the Birmingham Municipal Auditorium. A whites-only early show, and then a blacks-only later show, because, you know, it's the South in the 50s. About halfway through Nat King Cole's third song, Little Girl, I believe, this redneck named Ken Adams yells out, "Let's go get the coon!" And he and three other guys rush the stage.
So this Adam guy grabs Nat King Cole, the Stools and the cops run out, grab him before Nat really gets hurt. However, the Birmingham police had been tipped off that there might be trouble at the show, and they had a bunch of plainclothes cops in the crowd, and these guys ran up on the stage to help out.
The Stools don't know these guys are cops. They think they're a second wave of attackers, and they beat them back as well.
Naturally, Elvin and Antonio are arrested for assaulting the police officers. Elvin broke one of the plainclothes cops' guy's nose with a Coke bottle, and Antonio snapped the other one's glasses. Cosmo apparently slept through it all backstage.
Now, during the melee, Al Floss yelled at Ted Heath to play the national anthem to calm things down. Well, being British, Ted Heath and the boys did what any Brits would do. They played God Save the Queen. This only enraged the Southerners and led to serious violence.
Kenneth Adams and the other attackers were part of a KKK splintering group, the North Alabama Citizens Council, and they had plans to kidnap Nat King Cole and to stop rock and roll.
The plan had called for 100 people to rush the stage, but 96 of them apparently chickened out.
See, the Citizens Council was formed by Asa Earl Carter, who claimed that the NAACP was infiltrating Southern teenagers with this rock and roll music. Now, he could have been onto something, but why are you picking on Nat King Cole? He didn't sing anything like rock and roll. He was more of a Black Sinatra. So you gotta wonder about, Asa's mental acuity.
Asa Carter would quit the Citizens Council in 1958 after a dispute ended in shooting two of the members over finances. And he became an inflammatory speechwriter for George Wallace in the 1960s.
By 1970, Asa Carter decided that George Wallace was too liberal for his taste and decided to run against him for governor of Alabama on the white supremacist platform. Surprisingly, he only got 1.5% of the vote.
Say what you will about Asa Carter, but under the pen name Forrest Carter, he wrote the novel that became the basis for the classic 1976 Clint Eastwood film, The Outlaw Josie Whale. And the novel Little Tree was endorsed by Oprah Winfrey's book club, until she found out who he was.
Ted Heath wanted to cancel the tour after the attack, but the promoter, who had already made hundreds of thousands of dollars on ticket pre-sales, told Heath that if he pulled out of the tour, his work visas would be canceled, they'd be kicked out of the country, and they could fly back to jolly old England on their own dime.
Television had a hard time figuring out how to do music in the 50s. There was a show out of Detroit run by a couple of DJs, Pat and Johnny, who basically would just focus on images of house pets, like rabbits and fish, while they played the music.
Whirligig out of Philly would show an oscilloscope as the song played. The Stools' early TV appearances were an extension of this, where they would show random images, much like what REM ended up doing in their early videos more recently.
But Al Floss had a good reason for keeping the Stools' faces hid.
And what could that reason be? Find out next time when the complete and alarming history of America's greatest garage band, the Stools, continues. Join us then, won't you?